Good morning, midday update actually for the stock market Thursday, Jan 29, 11:19 a.m. Eastern Time. Giving you update because of some volatility in the stock market here. We've had the Nasdaq down a huge amount, and it's much weaker than the S&P 500. I noticed the Nasdaq Composite normally would be 0.4% weaker on a percentage basis than the S&P 500. Well, it's more like 0.8. So they're hammering high tech. Some people in the news are saying this is a rejection of all this money spent on AI, when earlier today they said the exact opposite, that people were fine with spending all that money. Well, I think there's more to it. I think this is more actually geopolitical. Trump has moved an aircraft carrier in closer to Iran. I think the market's playing, saying any weekend now we're going to attack Iran. But there's other things going on here, and maybe there's something we don't understand financially in our own system here, that something is breaking. We also have to watch Japan, whether something breaks with interest rates too high too fast and the carry trade suddenly blows out, and then that can upset financial markets. There's a variety of things going on, but many of these things we have to deal with every day. We've dealt with it for years, okay? So to me, it's the Iran thing that actually sticks out as something that could concern investors, is saying, I think I'll just sell some here and back away and see what happens. Okay, now in Iran, I did look it up, and this is only on AI sources, so I don't know how accurate it is, but coming up with Iran produces 3.5 to 4.5% of global production, and the AI stuff picked the best website or best source for it at around 4.4. I do think it's on the high end of the range maybe, but at any rate, let's just use 4%. That's pretty small global production. Long term, we can go to war in Iran, wreck things, and life just goes on. It's not going to hurt the U.S. economy or the world economy. And you look at the European markets, they weren't that weak. Now they're getting close to closing, and they're getting weaker because of the U.S. The U.S. market's causing a nuisance for the rest of the world markets, and more so Europe, since they were open here but closing soon. Minutes here. You could see they started out happy-dappy for the day, many different countries, and some of them now have turned negative on the day, but not all of them. They're trying to hang up. So apparently, if this is a Iran thing, really Europe isn't that concerned, okay? So interesting. And the rest of the world, of course, is sleep time, so we won't know until tonight what they think of it. And the interest rates really don't seem to be doing much around the world that I can see. So this really is either a marketplace that just got a little carried away and overshot on its own, or it's worried about the Iran thing, because I'm not finding enough evidence they're really worried about something breaking in our financial machine. At any rate, pretty aggressive selling here, but when you look at the volume so far on this 6-hour chart, it's no higher than any other day. And yet here they've just beaten this market up, okay? Really, this has been a very orderly drop. Okay, just drops a few points every few minutes. What's happened is the demand just walked away. The buyers just walked away. Whatever few sellers wanted to sell, they had to sell lower and lower, and finally panicking a little bit that they're not sure why something's wrong there, okay? But I think the market makers are actually helping out. Maybe not, but I think they're helping out. And this is rather orderly meltdown, but it is a meltdown, okay? Now, the Nasdaq has gone down to this target range and overshot it a little bit, and we don't have any additional targets for that. You'd have to go faster and faster to come up with a little bit lower and lower targets here in order to do that. And it's also come down to this trend line that really, when people are in a doubt of what's going on, they look at charts. If they don't know what news to really believe in and faith in, don't know how to calculate it, they'll just look at the charts. What they're really saying is, what does the market want to do, and I'll do it too, which sometimes creates rather idiotic market and irrational, but it also can create some intelligent trading and make some money. Now, the VIX has picked up a bit here, so we know they're putting protection on the downside, that somebody's a little bit worried. Meanwhile, we know some are probably just liquidating. And if we look at the active investor manager, they were already pulling something out on the way up here a little bit, and they've been bouncing on that index from around 80 to a little over 100 for quite some time. I think that kind of reflects a portion, and it's a small portion of their portfolios, that they're more than willing to sell it and buy it day after day, week after week, play with it. But I think a significant portion, they've been hanging on since at least April and maybe longer, okay? They're just trying to follow long term. And I suspect next week we'll learn this week they sold some more, but I don't think it's going to turn out to be a crashing, burning thing. Now, with this, we have level 3 top in place. It's obvious it's in place, all right? Coming down into a level 5 bottom due 1 p.m. and later on in the overnight market. And if you put it on a microscope, it's looking more like 1:45, 2 p.m. the earliest, on into the overnight market. Now, if you throw out this intraday stuff, the model's saying, well, it ought to be down into tomorrow. And it could even be down into Monday. You put the intraday stuff in it saying, well, you should get a bounce late today, overnight, maybe only overnight, but it's probably not going to be much of a bounce. And yes, it probably will be down yet again tomorrow. But I'm wondering it might not be down that much, or we've got most of the selling out of the way. And again, it depends on what's this. Is there any breaking news coming on this Iran thing? Okay. The interesting thing is the intraday is suggesting against the daily, weekly, monthly data that it's unlikely it's going down into Monday. Even though it's allowed, it's probably bottoming tomorrow. So unless we actually attack Iran over the weekend, I suspect the market will be up on Monday. Unfortunately, that's all inside of a level 3 downtrend. I suspect it's not going to bottom to Wednesday next week or later. So I think there's something coming for day traders for a little bit of a bounce late today into overnight, and maybe only overnight, and then they're going to go sell it again. I think there's the inter-week trader who's going to try to buy this late Friday and maybe on Monday. But then we have the level 3 trader who's probably going to still sell rallies and would like to remain bearish on into next week. And all of that can just fall into line to even more serious bearishness if we actually go into Iran. If not, I think we'll probably see a relief rally from next week into the following week, okay? So the Nasdaq's been beat up the most, but it's also at some price levels to tell us maybe they've done enough for the day. Well, if we look at the indicators, though, on the NASDAQ, it's only mid-range. That can be a secondary buy, put in a bottom. But since we know it should go lower in tomorrow, now maybe it only kind of moves sideways in tomorrow, but it does bother me, this indicator, and I'm sure it's bothering intraday traders. This indicator needs to go down to oversold probably. And that would mean lower. Well, I've also seen a time when the market takes a hard hit like this and moves sideways, especially overnight, but the indicator actually moves lower and can come to oversold. Then it comes into a buy signal, and then the market was up. So at this stage, I'm not so sure that indicator guarantees of lower, but it is telling there's probably still lower to come. And again, even if it rallies for a few hours the next few days, unfortunately, the level 3 bottom is not probably due until Wednesday or later, and that's going to cause some issues. So all of this is short-term to very short-term. And by the way, the NASDAQ ratio and the S&P 500, look at this. It was looking so great for us, feeling happy-dappy. And then they knock it all the way back to about last week. But that's not about all they've done. They haven't even turned this indicator around. Again, I think we have to assume there's going to be some selling next week. But when they look at all, we're going to hang in here. And it really hasn't changed anything for those larger, more important trends that I suspect most of you are interested in, including myself, that this is probably just another pullback on the way higher, on the way up in a bull market. Interest rates have actually backed off a little bit. They don't seem to be too excited, not doing anything. This is really a stock market kind of scare and issue here. And crude oil, of course, is still jumping. And gold is still firm. And Bitcoin is sliding, though, along with the stock market here. And now what we want to do is go over to the weekly chart here, and you can see the week was up, now it's down, negative reversal. It pulls down. We already warned you it can be down next week, following week, then up again. For the moment, yes, it's below the 5-week average. We have to see if they close it there by the end of the week to give us some more negative indication. But for the moment, this can be just a pullback a little bit more into a bottom next week, following week, and probably next week. And then it's going to rally, and what it is zigzagging up into a level 2. Now, the Iran thing, of course, can destroy this pattern, knock it down more than we'd like. But on a longer term basis, it's unlikely going to be an end of world scenario. The stock market would probably go up. I think if you could go back the last 2 or 3 years and look at all the things going on with Iran and Ukraine and Russia and Israel, okay, really they hit the market about 1 week to 2 weeks and sometimes less than a week. And then the market went up anyways. All right. This oil thing is a bit different and sounds more scary, but at the same time, if they're only producing a little over 4% or around 4% production oil, that's not a long-term problem. The problem with any kind of analysis like that is you think you got it all figured out. That's what makes sense, but the problem is everybody else may just be panicking, selling anyways. They don't know or they don't trust it. They just got to sell anyways. And then that analysis that is right, is realistic, but is actually not rational to them. And then they do what's really irrational, but it's rational to them. And they can win, at least temporarily, proving themselves right and proving you wrong, even though you had the analysis correct. That's just part of the game of analysis. But I think over the long run, though, the more realistic, rational thing is we're going to get through this and we'll move higher. So hopefully this is some help how you want to play this into today, tomorrow, into next week. I am concerned of the NASDAQ pulling back so much. This is the breadth here that's weakened as well for the S&P 500. And then this is the breadth of the NASDAQ, the abrupt turnaround. This is definitely a hit. And we don't explain it that well. And the interesting thing is I look at most of these Wall Street websites, they're really not explaining it that well, okay? And this is the S&P 500 cash is starting to bounce back on the hourly chart a little bit here. So to me, someone's going to view this as buy the dip at some point here. But I'm rather surprised on these Wall Street sites and then a few of the non-Wall Street news type sites, they've said little to nothing about the Iran thing. And yet the market's crashing like it thinks it's happening. So maybe it's not Iran, maybe it's something else, but I don't find anything in these websites, Wall Street or non-Wall Street, that's showing any kind of problems with Japan or Europe or US and our financial markets, our banking system or anything like that. And you can bet when you have serious down days, the Federal Reserve is there watching things, Treasury's watching things. The market makers on exchange, that's part of their business to try to provide a little bit of support and stability here. And I think they've kind of done this. This is a faster meltdown than what we've seen. And we've had several over the past 12 months and years and this and that. But the volume is adding up throughout the day. I think that it's not necessarily that big a deal volume-wise, but obviously someone struck a nerve here where they had to sell every few minutes. And if nobody bought it, in other words, they wanted to sell a bounce. They waited a few minutes, didn't happen, so they sold it lower. And again, this is more demand backing off and not so much selling, but the selling, because of a lack of demand, has to reach further, lower and lower in order to get their sales done. I think people are backing out for a little bit of protection here relative to Iran, and I think it's about all it is. And now we'll just have to see whether something else hits it harder. And yes, it can be beaten here the next 2 weeks for a last minute level 2 bottom on those weekly charts and maybe something more serious. And we'll just have to either write it out or you got to jump in and out on the way and hopefully get back in later, because my guess is when I look out to summer, we're probably still going higher, other than we also don't know how much more Trump stuff is coming at us. And as far as Venezuela pumping oil to meet that, and we may pump more oil out of the U.S. and actually benefit from shutting down Iran, although it'll make prices higher at our pumps, but it's probably not going to be high enough to really hurt our economy. It'll slow it down, but it's not going to drive us into a recession by itself, I don't believe. Again, this is the tricky part. Maybe we all just lose our minds and overreact as if Iran makes half the oil in the world, okay? When really it's making 4%. We can do that. We have the freedom to make a nuisance for ourselves, all right? And somebody is right now, but I don't think the overall market, I think the overall market is getting used to these 100-point down days in the S&P 500, even 200, and realizes they can just be buy the dips and nuisances and even fake outs at times here. I'll finish this with the daily chart. I'm just curious how much the QLD has been beaten up, and there it is. And I've noticed that Look at that, wiped out 4 days, up days, wiped it out all in one day. Sad affairs here and thence, and unfortunately it's not going to bottom next week, so it may go lower and come all the way back down to here. But I really like this recent target to put it up to there, and then we have an old target related to here, still valid. I don't know. I think this is a little noisy, nuisance, nonsense, but again, of course, we have to consider this whole RAND thing, and I don't know if I'm smart enough to really figure that out and find that kind of information there. I suspect most people on Wall Street aren't, okay, and maybe that's also why they're a bit skittish, scary here. Any rate, best forecast is a blip up later today, tonight, but down tomorrow again, but maybe not any lower necessarily. And then if they don't go into a RAND, my guess is they'll be up on Monday, but and I would think if they're going to do a RAND, it's going to be at night more than day. Even if it's day, I think it's going to be more at the early part of a weekend. So hopefully the world calms down and won't be so scared Sunday night, and especially on Monday. They do look at these things, and the Trump people look at them even more than some of the other presidents. You can just see if things are going down really weak, they want to hold off on the next thing that could upset people. They'd rather do it when the market is up. That way it won't knock down as much. Where if it's already down much and they do something bad, then it knocks it down even worse and could break the system here. They're playing those kind of games. They really are. All right. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thank you.